Okay, welcome everyone. So we are inaugurating today our series of talks on labor in higher education. Our host, we're the host, the Federal Association of University Professionals Adjunct Constituency Council. We're hosting Bryan Sacks, who is the president of the acronym PTLFC-AAUP-AFT. In other words, the Rutgers Adjunct Union. He happens to be also my union president at Rutgers, where I'm also employed. So I'm doing double duty here, representing both unions, and he's going to talk to us about situation of labor in higher ed, especially at Rutgers, but also related to situation at large, about strategy, history, everything. So let's see. We begin. You want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your.
Sure. Dave and others were good enough to send these really great prompts that'll help frame the discussion. The first one was just for me to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got involved in labor organizing. Well, I've been an adjunct for 30 years, including 10 years while I was on the same floor here at what was then Anderson Hall. And I suppose I always felt, this is a bit embarrassing, but I always felt like a leftist who was too left for labor unions, although I joined them. I think I'm probably right, by the way. But after 2016, I felt I had to do more than I was doing. I had to accept the imperfection of organizations that I wasn't being part of the leadership for because of that felt imperfection, and just be a joiner and a leader more than I had been in the past. I didn't know if I'd be successful. I ran for the board in 2019 of the PTLFC and became a board member and then an officer the same year. As I'll talk about later, during the contract campaign of the last year, I was the chair of the bargaining committee and vice president and now president.
Great, thanks. So our first basic question is about demands for adjuncts. So of course, in the recent contract negotiations at Rutgers, Rutgers union demanded a lot of things similar to what we're seeking now in our contract negotiations. Offering appointments, guarantees for appointments, equal work for equal pay for equal work, and subsidized healthcare. So we want to know a little bit about how union developed those demands, how successful they were in getting those demands met by the university, and maybe obstacles for future gains for adjuncts at Rutgers.
Let's talk about all of those.
Please do.
So our three core demands were, in fact, equal pay for equal work, job security for adjuncts, and subsidized healthcare. I would say that we got very close to achieving the first. Went further than we've ever gone in achieving the second. And the third was not achieved in bargaining, but is still open and is currently being pursued through the legislative process, which I'll talk about. So in terms of equal pay for equal work, this is important to us. We had to decide what equal meant, right? We are part-time lecturers, although many of us work full-time. We wanted parity in terms of our pay with our NTT, non-tenure track, full-time colleagues. Our argument was that we do the same work that they do, pretty much. Of course, we're also asked to do non-teaching work, service of an unpaid variety. When they are doing those things, they typically get course releases or additional compensation. But we modeled our equal pay for equal work demand on non-tenure track colleagues. That was still difficult because you had at Rutgers entities that were teaching 15 credits and called full-time, 18 credits called full-time, 21 and 24. Right, during the course of an academic year. We chose 20 credits for our full-time equivalent. That was just what we thought was quote unquote fair. It also lined up with the amount of credits that was needed per semester to qualify for, I think it was the state healthcare exchange. Don't quote me on that, but that's where we started, and we came very close to achieving that. Our gains were historic for us. 43% increase over 4 years, 30% of that in the first year, that was paid almost entirely retroactively, which was, a significant chunk of money for a lot of adjuncts, about $1,700 at least per class for many of them. As it turns out, first time being said in public, the administration looks like interpreted our contract in a way that is going to make the total gain more than 50% over 4 years. Some of you guys know that. The administration did mention it actually to some people, but yeah, so if you factor in additional compensation gains that we made with things like advancement in rank, new advancement levels, right? A raise from 9 to 10% when you make each rank advancement, and more. There are lecturers, many who will be making more than most NTPs on a per class basis. So yeah, we're very pleased with the gains that we made there. There's always more you can do. Job security, for the first time ever, we had 2 semester and 4 semester appointments on books. There are various, it is amazing, it really is. And there are various routes that lecturers, are now called lecturers, not PTLs. That's all good. I do it all the time. Credit to myself, really. There are 3 different routes that you can avail of to get a multi-semester appointment. The one that I think will affect most lecturers is if you teach for 2 consecutive years, 4 consecutive semesters, at least 12 credits per year, or an average of 6 per semester, you become eligible for a 2-semester appointment. So after just 2 years, right, teaching half time, you would become eligible. And I think hundreds of lecturers will become eligible for that. There's other ways too that you can get a 2-semester appointment. And by the way, that is supposed to carry an appointment that is at an equivalent course load for you. We didn't want it to simply be the case that you were entitled to a 2-semester appointment with 1 course, right? Which is that effectively might be, a pay cut, significant one. So for lecturers that advance ranks, we created ranks 4 and 5. We had 2 and 3 already. Lecturers who have advanced ranks, they can become eligible too for 2-semester appointments that don't require them to have that half-time threshold. They could do it a quarter time, right? They could have 6 credits per year, right, as an average. And there's more technicalities, but basically that's the threshold for them to achieve 2-semester appointments. And then if you were teaching at Rutgers for 12 years consecutive, right, you were eligible with some other stipulations for potentially a 4-semester or 2-year appointment. All of this for the first time. And so there are outs, of course, that the administration has that they wanted built into the contract that we fought very hard not to have in there, but which made it in there. But we'll find out beginning fall 24, which is coming up very quickly, just how many lecturers will actually get those appointments. The third, healthcare, was not one in the contract campaign. Full-time faculty at Rutgers and full-time employees at Rutgers participate in the New Jersey State Health Benefit. And so they successfully pushed off the healthcare discussion to the legislative process. But we're fully engaged in it. We are devoting adjunct resources. We have a committee on healthcare that's joined with other adjunct committees around the state to push a bill that we're introducing that would allow New Jersey adjunct, that is adjuncts who teach in county and state colleges in addition to Rutgers, to aggregate their service so that they can get to the full-time threshold and thereby get coverage. The way it is right now, if you teach half-time at Rutgers and you teach half-time at Montclair State, oh well, sorry, you don't teach full-time, right? If you do teach full-time, you just don't know one university. And so that'll affect a significant number of lecturers. We want more than that too. But the first pass we're taking in the legislative process is to work with friendly legislators that we're also trying to get elected. This, of course, that's what they want. this cycle. And our hope is to take the bill that we have, rework it in the lame duck period, and then reintroduce it in January to the new session, to achieve for the first time state subsidized healthcare for elections. So obviously there's more I could say, but those were our demands and how we did. How did we arrive at them? We did a member survey. We were very big and remain very big on member engagement. We had a pretty good sense of what our members would like. I mean, the fact that you guys have similar demands here speaks to that. But we did a member survey that at the time garnered the largest response that we had ever garnered for any, missive, any ask we made of our membership in terms of like participation. More than 500 lecturers responded. We don't usually get over that. So yeah, they came out of member engagement, which was really important to us.
Great, fantastic. Well, so
you wanted to talk briefly too about the obstacles for future games.
yeah, that's fine.
I could talk too long about this, but you might have noticed around the country, places like NYU, for instance, or adjuncts who made very good gains. But the administration is trying to claw back a lot of those gains by other means. They're using things like managerial prerogative with respect to like course load caps. We've seen departments, for instance, tell their lecturers, I'd love to hire you for more classes, but I can't do that. Right? We capped the number of classes an adjunct can teach at 3, right, or 2. Well, that's not permitted at Rutgers. Not permitted. We now have an advancement path, a path toward advancement that allows adjuncts to advance not only by semesters taught, but by courses accumulated. That was recently won. So if you cap courses at a certain level, you slow that progression, and it, in our view, would be an unfair labor practice that we threaten to take to PERC, which is the body that litigates those things, adjudicates those things. So they're trying through course load caps, through rejiggering attendance minimums, right, which is the level at which lecturer classes get cut, and other forms of like managerial prerogative control to claw back certain of the gains. To me, this is really like the holy grail fight for adjuncts. Adjuncts, full-time faculty, grad workers, staff don't operate their universities. Administrators do, who have other interests a lot of the time than we do, right? And at public universities, I think there's pressure points that we can use to try and, claw back some of that control when, the university path so clearly departs from what its mission should be. So I could say more. I don't know. Talk forever.
We can come back to this strategy later on. So, the next issue. So you've definitely listed some amazing gains for adjuncts and possibilities for the future, right? So you wrote an article for Labor Notes shortly before the recent strike at Rutgers, talking about the process of merging bargaining units, essentially getting the full-time faculty and tenured faculty to work with adjuncts as a single bargaining body. Can you tell us about that process? How you, both how adjuncts decided to take that route and how you convinced the full-time and rest of the faculty to take part as well?
Yeah, and so this will be something that will likely be different in every other place than Rutgers because of just the strange nature of our unions.
It is a little strange.
Adjuncts are in their own union at Rutgers, which has benefits, right? We're fully aligned, right? Such as it is. And in the other faculty unions, you have the clinical faculty and certain medical professionals, and the large full-time faculty unit, which contains tenured faculty, non-tenured stream faculty I referenced before, grad workers, also EOF counselors, and postdocs. Those 5 and us, right? And also the clinical faculty. So historically, there has been, understandable tension between adjunct faculty union and full-time faculty union. based on what I would say were perceived disparities in interest. I'm sure none of this will be surprising to any adjuncts. But in this cycle, we in the adjunct union were blessed with progressive leadership. And it's been there in the past too, I should be clear. But in this cycle, I think there was a greater density of progressive leadership in the full-time faculty unit. And they accepted our argument that we were principally indistinct from NTTs. We do the same work for the most part. We ought to be paid the same. It's good for students for us to be protected. By the way, remember, they have NTTs in their union, right? And so we made the argument that it serves students, it serves non-tenure stream full-time faculty, it ultimately serves tenure stream faculty to bring up the least protected to a greater status, right? To pay us more, better for students, it's better for university, and to make us more secure, because that becomes the floor, right? That as it gets raised, which tenured and non-tenured stream full-time faculty can't fall below when the assault on tenure comes to their doorstep, as it's of course come to so many other places, right? And so we're one faculty. We're really one faculty. Not only are we indistinct from NTTs, but even most tenured faculty, we're really not all that different. And of course, we all know the things that need to be overcome to really be perceived as true fellows. But blessed with progressive leadership, you know, in the form of Todd Wolfson and Becky Gibbon in the full-time faculty unit, the fact that they included us in, you know, a variety of ways in the governance of their unit. We built this close bond, and they were willing to embark on this campaign to merge units. We knew it would fail. I'm going to say that we knew that Rutgers would not simply recognize us, but it was an excellent recognizing tool. I told you 500 people participated in our survey. Yeah. Well, when we went to those to our members and non-members, by the way, and said, will you sign a merger card to become part of the full-time faculty unit? They supported. We got almost 1,200 adjuncts to sign the card in like 2 or 3 months. We've never had 1,200 adjuncts do anything, you know? And so that was the year prior to our contract campaign. It set us up really well for them. Mm-hmm. And so we think that the demands that we were making were not really, like, from the full-time faculty's perspective, a matter of charity, right? But it was in their own self-interest, right? It's a rear guard action, you know, protect the teaching, you know, rear guard here, right? And bring up conditions for everyone. It's good for students, it's good for the university, it's ultimately good for faculty. So this one faculty hashtag that you asked about, David, came out of our joint organizing efforts. We didn't just like say we're going to merge. We operated like we were merged. We did that at the bargaining table too, which maybe we'll come to. But a year prior, we were already, you know, sitting on each other's organizing committees and our bargaining committees, fledgling at the time. And so the support of the tenured faculty was perhaps like the most important element in the enormous participation we had in the merger campaign. Adjuncts, right? We all face and receive like slight after slight over the course of our careers, if we're long enough, to know that the full-time faculty wanted us in their union and accepted that we were their fellows. I think it gave heart to people who might otherwise, understandably, people in their precariety, not want to do something like some. Yeah, participate in union activities.
Great. So next question. So also you did an interview with Jacqueline before the Rutgers strike as well, talking about AAUP tactics and the potential for integrating undergrads in your arguments for improving the conditions of the university as a whole, as part of, sounds like similar campaign, right? Convincing full-time faculty that your interests are their interests, so too convincing undergrads that actually they have an interest in improving the quality of education, improving the quality of life at
Absolutely.
the university system. So we see the demands listed. So you created something called bargaining for the common good, a series of demands to improve quality of education as a whole, a rent freeze. So apparently Rutgers is also a large property owner in the area around the universities. And ending some of the punitive fines and fees for undergraduates as a way of basically improving the quality of their education. Can you tell us about successes, how you came up with these possibilities for integrating undergrads in this kind of work?
Sure, definitely. So there's the BCG demands, right, and the student demands that kind of overlapped here. They can be distinguished, perhaps. But to me, they were, they're a moral necessity. And it was not hard, I have to tell you, to convince students that, look, we're on your side too. We're your teachers. We give a shit about you. We're talking to the university that's, full of students who have their eyes on the bottom line, not the quality of education here. And the students did not really have a hard time. They got that. But one of the first things that we did that can happen anywhere, but which also took organizing and made some people a little antsy, was that we had something we called Adjuncts Speak Week for a couple of semesters. What was that? Well, our crack organizing team noted, like many of us, that a lot of students don't know what an adjunct is. They don't know if they're being taught by an adjunct, right? Even if they do know, they don't know what makes an adjunct an adjunct. And so we organized adjuncts to take 10 minutes out of the class of their, discretion during Adjunct Speak Week to, if you will, kind of come out as an adjunct. And if you don't make it part of your classes, tell students what that means. And explain to them what it means in terms of your working conditions. Connect your working conditions to their learning conditions. And it was eye-opening, I can tell you, for lots of students who again, a lot of them knew heard the word adjunct. And then, how much you get paid? And you don't get health care for teaching here? You don't have an office? They had come to office hours on Zoom or something, they would have seen you don't have an office. But yeah, so that was really, that was important work that we did. And the students became a force unto themselves in the coming agitation towards work knowledge and then ultimately the strike. But I do have to say that we ran into several difficulties with respect to the bargaining for the common good demands that were owing to situational factors, which I hope wouldn't repeat in your case, but which did in ours. For one, the demands of the bargaining for the common good collective weren't really well publicized, and that was the union's fault. We did what we could, I think, to publicize them with our membership, but not sufficiently. So I think we bear the responsibility for that. And the bargaining for the common good demands we were making, some of which David talked about, for a rent freeze and for the fines and fees for undergrads to be waived or frozen, they didn't recognize that. The university, they didn't think that we had standing to bring them. Right? So the folks, a little part of the bargaining for the common good, I'll call them the collective, didn't really have a seat at the table. We said, no, we were making a seat at the table for them. And they had very significant, appropriate demands that ran into the millions of dollars. But I think that because we did such a poor job, and again, this is me speaking, others might disagree, but because we did, relatively speaking, a poor job bringing our members around to the importance of these demands, I think that the bargaining for the common good folks had, expectations about what could be achieved here that weren't realistic. But again, I think the lion's share of the responsibility fell on us. Now, we did win significant things. We won $600,000 from the state of New Jersey in potentially renewable annual funds that were going to be deposited into the account of an organization that DCG folks were going to lead and that we're now putting together. It's just been formed. But there were hard feelings, I think, that were created during the process. This feeling that like their demands weren't being prioritized sufficiently. And I think some of that was legitimate. Not all of it, but a lot of it was legitimate. So I could say more, but it just gives you a sense of what like our dynamics were that I hope we get elsewhere. But they're important demands. We're doing this, teachers in particular. We don't do it obviously to get rich. You know, we do this for students, and students can see it. You know, so I think that was important.
Yeah.
Trying to build those bridges.
Just even Loryn's been trying to get numbers on how much of what a student pays for a single class goes into the actual salary.
That's a great
class.
That is
Just showing that to the student.
That's a great
really blows their minds. Like, you know, like one of our tuitions is paying your whole salary. Where's the rest of the money going? Yeah.
It's a great exercise. We had that happen right after I don't speak.
Yeah.
You know, a class full of 50 students and you're not much paying tuition money. So how much do you think I get for teaching this class? So,
yeah.
of course, they don't say anything,
Right,
but
exactly.
then you tell them.
You're probably getting 100, 200 G's. Yeah. No. Great. Thank you, Bryan. Well, so next question. So thinking about pushback against adjunct gains, right? We talked about the successes, the one faculty getting full-time and tenured faculty to support adjuncts. A lot of people make the argument, and we hear this here at Temple sometimes, make the argument essentially that it's basically that the contract is a zero-sum game. That should, okay, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, that any gains for adjuncts, be it even something as simple as more money, but also especially long-term security, it's going to decrease flexibility and essentially weaken the system of tenure. So what do we argue against that?
Yeah, I mean, again, here I would ask back to somebody that says that, well, why do you believe that? Is it the case where tenure is being weakened by management that like adjuncts then gain? It's not zero sum. They're happy to take it all and not give any of it back, right? I don't see how strengthening the position of adjuncts weakens tenure, except by some illegitimate zero sum argument, right? This to me is also down to the problem of managerial control over university budgets and priorities and projections, right? The answer is to reject any zero sum reasoning. Every university, for the most part, either has the money or can find the money to pay adjuncts a living fair wage. So at Rutgers, before this contract campaign, we would tell people that adjuncts are responsible for teaching about a third of all the classes at Rutgers. What size do you think our compensation takes up of the university's budget? You know it's low, so what do you think? We teach a third of the classes. It's 1/2 of 1%. Right? And so we got it raised now. It's not, it's gonna be just under 1%, right? Big raise, a little bit, right? But so the idea that again, you're taking from tenure to find a few tenths of a percent of, in the Rutgers case, it's a $5-something billion budget, is ludicrous, right? Look, if management balks at that, they tell you they just don't have the money, tell them to open the books, and we'll be glad to show you where the money is. You know? They won't do it, of course. But we had an excellent presentation done. Full-time faculty was wonderful in this Rutgers. Man named Howard Bonsis, and if anybody knows him, he's teaching at one of the Michigan universities. He comes and does an analysis of the Rutgers financial statements every year for us. Anybody who's interested. And he shows where the money.
What's his name?
Howard Bunsis, Bunsis. And he shows again where a lot of the money is either like being hidden or where it's being like sloughed off to the academic, to the athletic program, so it can go down, you know, a black hole, or
So it was kind of big at Rutgers, wasn't it? Wasn't there?
oh yeah, there was a whole.
Yeah.
They created like an internal facility to hide, you know, the true extent of the losses, right? So, but not to get too far from your question, I just don't see how bringing up standards for adjuncts weakens tenure. They already have the idea to weaken tenure.
Mhm.
I just want to tell you.
Yeah, we know.
Good. They already got that idea, independent of what, you know, adjunct standards are. And to me, the ultimate holy grail is we've got to mobilize adjuncts and all academic workers to believe that, hey, it's not our university if it ever was. It's certainly not anymore. It shouldn't be their university, right? It's ours and we have to have it. We need it back. And that means clawing away from them forms of managerial prerogative control, which they will fight hardest on.
Yeah, and your redirection of the question is exactly right, and I think exactly what we need to do, right? Fighting amongst ourselves for whatever scraps they're willing to give us is not going to lead to any kind of solidarity and power. So, well,
So you ask good questions later. We'll come to them. There are things to do cross category.
yeah,
We'll get to it.
let's get to it. So, the next question I had was about, well, so we're currently in contract negotiations, and we've put forward some pretty transformative demands for adjuncts and other contingent faculty. And so far, the administration has not been very responsive. And so we are considering taking labor action, so to speak, or possibly going on strike. And of course, right, the adjuncts have the most to gain from that, but also they in many ways have the most to lose, right? We're the most precarious in the university. So how can we go about helping convince our fellow precarious members to make that money?
Yeah.
We want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the first thing to say is our members are us, right? We're not the union, they're not the union, we're all together, and we gotta level with everything. Strikes bring risk. There's no getting around it. But there's power and relative safety in large numbers. There's power and relative safety in large numbers. I mean, one thing that can be done very quickly when you're building towards a potential action is to get solidarity statements from other campus unions. Everything you're doing is trying to signal to management your strength, right? So to get solidarity statements from other campus unions, right, who might not be up for a contract, it's great. If they are, together with them to the extent that you can. Right? Work as closely as possible with more secure faculty to get their backing, if you can. Ultimately, build your members' resolve. Bring your membership along slowly, if that's what needs to happen. Right? Build a critical mass through what are called structure tests. I had to learn all this stuff. I still am not by any means any master organizer. People in my unit are the ones that did this far more than I did. I handled more of the bargaining stuff, but I became convinced of much of what Jane McAlevey and others talk about with respect to the need to figure out how strong you are. You can structure test yourself, right? So, for instance, we did strike school a couple of years out to see how many people would come. Right? And that was actually very pleasantly surprising that so many did. We did the merger campaign, right, to see if folks would be interested in that, and it was overwhelmingly the case. As it became clear that we had like a fairly active membership behind us, we built towards a strike pledge. I didn't know what that was. I thought, when I joined the union, you did everybody that says ready, let's go strike. Right? No, you build and you're testing your membership when you sign a card that promises to go on strike later. Right? Yes.
Just dropped into
Yeah, I didn't read it yet.
Fabian Rapini. It's been a questionable case for a long time.
Okay.
And now she's a really good. That's not good news. Yeah, right. Anytime hospitalized. So summer, she started SPED program.
Yep.
She felt bad.
Yeah, I think actually I hadn't sent her outreach because I was waiting to figure out when. I think she got an F, right? Yeah.
Like there's a whole bunch of things going on, but
Yeah.
she is not English as her first language, but on top of that, she's also she's
There we go. Thank you. Sorry.
So yeah, you take a strike pledge, right? And then a literal strike authorization vote. And we have to tell members, right, who aren't, you're like, what am I signing? Well, that doesn't make me we're going on strike. Right. In fact, we hope we don't have to go on strike by doing this. We hope management will, get wise and see that we have so much support for a strike that they actually start to move towards our proposals. So you do it in those steps, right? We were signaling to management that we were serious. They didn't move at all. They didn't move at all, or very much at all, over the course of, we started bargaining in June, until we started taking the strike authorization, but in March, even then, right? It didn't really break until the governor got involved, which of course does not happen in every one of these situations. But the governor got involved again because we had full-time faculty with us, right? And we had support of other labor unions, and we had, an overwhelming strike vote where 80% of our membership participated, 95% yes. It just didn't happen. Adjuncts usually would vote in our union like 15% would turn out for the election, maybe 20, 80 people, 80% and 90%. So that's what you do, right? You bring your members along and you don't get in front of them, right? We used to call it the S word for a while. Right, strike. Like, should we mention it at this town hall? Should we not? We probably were too conservative about it, frankly. Our members were ahead of us, right? But we were trying to be cognizant that, look, we're precarious. We don't have job security. We have no basis for adventurism as leaders, right? And we were really clear on that. At the same time, we have the most to gain by threatening our labor is our labor. So you organize for a strike in hopes you don't have to do it. If you do, then you win.
So you just mentioned the intervention of the governor of New Jersey, obviously extremely important in the success of the strike. We recently had a number of rallies with local, even state level politicians coming out. I mentioned in the questions to you, Chris Robb, who's a state representative. State representative was actually an adjunct at Temple, got laid off during the adjunct organization drive, and so he came out and spoke very forcefully about the fact that, right, he knows personally exactly the conditions that people like ourselves are facing, right? So he's sort of our perfect case scenario, but maybe wanted to ask you about insight and how we outreach further than that. I mean, it sounds like you mentioned getting state budget funding too for other issues, right? How do we go about doing that?
I mean, ultimately, what needs to happen is public higher ed, and public higher ed needs to be refunded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, needed reauthorization of the act.
Absolutely.
Right, and so organizations like Higher Ed Labor United, I don't know if folks are familiar.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, Scott Wolfson who's now the president of the Rutgers full-time faculty grad worker unit. Is one of the founders of it, maybe even, I don't know if he's still founder, but it's brought together more than 80, I think the number may be way higher now, representing hundreds of thousands, close to 500,000 academic laborers, not faculty, academic laborers, right? And that can be, maintenance staff, it can be, folks, transportation staff, anybody. Right, if you do, you work on a college campus to do cross-category work for the ultimate goal, not just of improving working conditions for everybody, right? But through the refunding of higher education. And so everybody should, whether or not it winds up being HELO or it winds up being some other formation, everybody should be interested in that. And in terms of the politicians, the local and state level politicians, I don't have any magic bullet there at all. But these are public institutions, right, that are choosing to run themselves like they're a corporation, right? They have an obligation, a public obligation that they're not meeting, and that's unacceptable. And so one of the efforts that we've undertaken, and again, I don't know how effective this will be with politicians, is to try and expose the financing model at public university, where again they run themselves effectively like a hedge fund that's got a school attached to it. From that perspective, getting filling classes to the brim or overfilling them, cutting adjuncts is good, right? Because their profile to the people that they want to impress, lenders, right, bondholders, right, they look worse when they have all of these large labor costs, right? Or they have, large commitments on the books. So they want us precarious. They want to be able to say, oh, yeah. Well, they have to this semester, we don't have. That's appalling as a model for a public university. It doesn't serve students. And so, exposing that financial model, also exposing at Rutgers, like the internal budgeting model they have, it's called RCM.
We have that too.
It's a scourge, right? And again, ultimately to me, that's what's got to be coming at. Right? The way things happen routinely at Rutgers, routinely at Temple, is the problem. Because look, we want a lot in the way of compensation gains. But if they can find a way to fire us or not reappoint us, if managerial prerogative, you guys know this, you don't have to tell the adjuncts this, but full-time faculty people, full respect to them, they need to be reminded that you don't make as much money as NTTs. If we don't have job security, they'll find a way. They'll find a way to cut us. The last thing I'll say is that administrators at Rutgers are, beholden to these ideas about how to run the university, that treat it like it's an airport. You got to fill every seat, right? And try and cut the places that aren't being used to to full capacity, right? As if it's like not a public institution serving good. These are people's lives, right? People that work there have lives, and through things like RCM and you got to know what InfoSilent is, with the course scheduling robot software that they use. There's just imposition of these demands on faculty and staff that that verge towards it in. So that was rambling a bit. I apologize, but politicians need to know that the union activity on campuses isn't just because we want more money. It's because public higher education has been progressively starved. We're way behind where we ought to be. And the people that work there deserve not just good wages, they deserve job security and like the bare minimum health care. Yeah, particularly like during a pandemic. Yeah. So I'll stop. We can all go on.
Yeah, all of this leads into thinking about higher education as a public good, which, like so many other public goods, has been eaten away at by everything in our culture. And so it does seem that funding for higher education is a prerequisite for building this understanding of we need to recover all of these public goods that are gradually being eaten away at. So the next couple of questions deal with, so we've been talking about internal to the university walls and bringing in students, bringing in other kinds of workers, cooperation across faculty. Wanted to talk about, well, this is one example of doing this, but creating solidarity across university systems, the ways that we can build power that way, and other possible avenues towards making these kinds of things, bringing in other institutions, So I'm in history, for instance, and a lot of historians have been talking about trying to bring in professional organizations and try and get other academic organizations involved in this kind of work. Can you speak to those possibilities?
Yeah, I mean, definitely not my my area of expertise or great understanding for sure, but I totally recognize the importance of bringing in the professional organizations. I mean, to me, anyone interested in academic freedoms, for instance, should be enlisted, could easily be enlisted, since without job security, adjuncts can't really be said to have any academic freedom. We all know that. Particularly in a time like this. So building solidarity across university systems, critical, HELU is a great vehicle for that too, You learn from what's happening in other places from the people it's happening to. I'd also just mention that when UAW workers union strike, but walk on the picket lines with them, we did. We should have done more, but we took a day, went out and did it, and nurses in New Brunswick, at Robert Johnson, who are appalling, being treated appallingly by management there. We've marched with them too. An injury to one is an injury to all. Very easy to access for workers. So our organizers, our professional staff organizers, do a great job making those connections. And I don't know what the status is. I don't know what the resources are here, but we invest in a lot of resources in our staff organizers. They're really important, even though we're member led. Right? It's great to have staff who are right there with you and know the terrain.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that covers all the questions
Thanks.
that I had. Shall we, maybe any questions from the audience?
Yeah, open the floor.
Yes, you don't want to say something? Ask the question to Bryan. We covered quite a bit of ground there.
I guess one question is on how universities try to de-skill academic labor. And I think maybe one question is, I don't know if it's happening at Rutgers, but one area of maybe managerial control that we could try to push back on is control over syllabi. Having like not letting them have the syllabi essentially, and us, the departments controlling them, because if they can just have whole sections of syllabi, and you can just give, a grad student who's like under last year's throw a syllabus out that's already been created by somebody else and just go teach that, right? Quality goes down, and that's like a form of, not that people are losing their skill in teaching, but a form of de-skilling the actual craft itself. Would that be a place where the managerial control relates to kind of the labor process in that way?
It does come up for us, right? There are a number of professors who are concerned about like intellectual property.
Yeah.
For instance. Yeah, right. And so, yeah, I mean, it's, for me, it's difficult in that, of course, you want to be collegial. Of course, you want to help anybody who's, I don't care about it. But at the same time, it's being used for the purpose of teaching. Josh, it's being done for the purposes that you say, for sure. I would say if that is something that your members are interested in, then absolutely. Absolutely, right? That, again, to me, it always comes back to the point our members concerned about. It varies in different places, right? But if that's a particularly like onerous requirement here, or one that's felt to be, unduly intrusive, absolutely.
I'm an NTT, I'm not an adjunct. However, I along with that young lady in the box over there, Ariana Fisher, we're part of the constituency for NTTs, I forget what the PIRCs, and I know in my case, I feel a lot of solidarity with the adjuncts. I feel no solidarity with tenure to zero. I don't feel, we can get into negative interest. Some of them are very nice people, and then sometimes they seem to understand our point of view, but a lot don't. And so I know that we've been trying to build coalition between adjuncts and NTTs. I do find NTTs, a lot of NTTs are not in solidarity with adjuncts. It's kind of like it's this, I want to say something really caustic and hold back because it's a very rude statement, but it's almost like because NTTs have the ability to be better than somebody, so they're better than adjuncts, and it's not true. You know what I mean? Power. It's like power structure. And and the thing is just if we're looking for change, we have to build on where our similarities lie. And here at Temple right now, I guess I was actually going to ask if you've dealt with this, because here at Temple now, adjunct in terms of job security, adjuncts and NTTs are very really close. It is true, we have benefits, we have salary, we have that, which adjuncts don't have. But we are losing jobs in a very significant precarious way, or under the threat.
That would be exactly where I would be.
Yeah.
On our adjunct board, we have former NTTs. When they were NTTs, they did the same exact thing they're doing as adjuncts, formerly for less money. Now very much closer to the same, but like, it's not hard for them to see at all that there isn't this distinction, this principal distinction I talked about between NTTs and adjuncts, even though, as you said, of course, once you've achieved NTT status, right, that distinction you have between yourself and an adjunct, you know, you could choose to emphasize, right, or you could feel it could feel magnified to you, right, but ultimately, again, the point is, NTTs are not injured by adjuncts becoming more secure.
Right,
That's the
that really
point.
needs to be said, right, that's a really good statement.
You're
We're not-
it's not that zero sum. It really isn't. It's only when we accept what I would claim are these false scarcity arguments, right? That we get competitive in that way, or upsmanship, right? Stuff that gets to be counterproductive. And so it is important to build those bridges. I can't emphasize it enough, right? If there are, and even with tentative faculty, I'll say it, right, which again is a bigger bridge to cross for lots of people. But these discussions are happening everywhere. They're happening in Hilo, and again, no magic bullets, but just overcome, get NTTs to see, to the ones who are open, that, you know, come on, we're all essentially the same at different job category. We all deserve certain protections, right? NTTs deserve a lot more than they get. Be honest.
We're working our ass off.
Of course, as more, and of course, that's also, right, it's not just charity, right, it's self-interest. Who's going to be sped up when adjuncts are cut? Full-time faculty who are tenured often want NTT, they see NTTs as being the teachers, you know, so they can do their research and like this, right? It's not a universal, but there are ways to get folks to see common interests, you know, and so I'm happy to say more too at length, you know, to folks, if, you know, conversations are already started and stuff, but it takes work to get people to see it like here. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
Are there any questions in the chat or anyone? Anyone online? Yeah, Ariana, your hand is up.
Hi, so this was very interesting, and I think I caught most of it. I was wondering, I don't know if you talked about this, and if you did, and I'm sorry, but why do you think that it only took, what, 5 days? Like, why do you think the administration at Rutgers responded like almost immediately? And do you think it had anything that the Temple grad student teachers strike had any effect on sort of the course of events at Rutgers?
That's a good question. I mean, I was paying attention to the grad students strike, and I have to admit, like in the beginning, feeling a kind of horror that more people weren't coming to their aid, you know, in the university community. I mean, I don't know if in New Jersey, like in Trenton, they were thinking that much about that. I think in our case, it was like a set of like forces that aren't likely to be replicated. The fact that, you know, the governor on Easter Sunday, when we were negotiating with Rutgers on the eve of what everybody knew was going to be our strike, kind of swooped in and said, I want to bring you guys to Trenton, right? We all understood what that meant, which was that you know, that was sort of the promise potentially of like fresh money from the state to bridge the gap. So I think the governor's pressure probably, you know, I hate to say that frankly, as like a union leader who doesn't want to just like appeal to legislators to solve labor problems, right? But the truth is, he only got involved in the first place because he saw our resolve and he saw how, you know, closely we were working with full-time faculty and other units, and that there was going to be a strike. This, labor-friendly governor, as he casts himself as, right? And so I think that had a lot to do with it. We also had things working in the background that might not have been that visible. A lot of people were worried about an injunction that if we declared a strike, that NJ, case law, if not statutory law, would have been favorable to the Rutgers administration if they sought an injunction and then to get it enforced. There were faculty of color from the scholarly community of President Holloway that wrote to him and said, it would basically be appalling if you were to declare an injunction against people, who were just availing of their right here to speech and to strike. And so that, and probably in combination with the governor's request, delayed it that week. I don't know that it would have continued. That he would have, I think he would have gone forward with the injunction in all likelihood had it gone into the next week. So I think the governor wanted it resolved. And once his money, the state's money, came onto the table, we'll talk about that too if you want. That really made the difference.
Sure, want to tell us more about how that, what do you know about the process of, I mean, was there a concerted campaign from the union to kind of prime the pump for that to happen?
Not really. I mean, at least I'm not aware of it. I mean, one of the things that was super interesting that if ever, there was a book or a film about it, that happened there was that once we were in Trenton and all negotiating together, which we're all in a room, we all sat at the table more or less together. Disparities between adjuncts and full-time faculty kind of dissipated. I mean, I'd like to believe that was in part due to like the strength and competency of our leadership, right? But they absolutely treated us as partners. I felt that way more or less the whole time. But I'm saying, like, the state didn't just talk to the full-time faculty and expect they'll go along.
Right.
No, we were centered during this campaign the whole time. Right. Again, remember, there are contingent faculty in the full-time graduate unit. So we always felt like we had a seat at the table, and that we were heard. So yeah, I didn't think that we didn't care where the money came from. There were people that said, no, I want it to come from Rutgers. I don't want their money, I want their money. Like, they get a lot of money from the state. You're aware, like, they get like hundreds of millions of dollars in appropriation. So I'm making light of it here, but that did cause divisions, I can tell you, within our coalition. Some people felt like the strike was sufficiently strong to withstand another week, even with injunctions, and didn't want us to accept the framework. I wrote about this in the labor notes piece. And I think there are still hard feelings about that. But to my mind, right, you had unions operating democratically, making informed decisions based on what they're being told and seeing on the ground, told by their organizers and seeing on the ground. And, it went pretty much as well as it was going to go. But I don't know how much we have to get into the weeds of that stuff. I'd be happy to, but again, I'm thinking of people's time. It's 3:30, so. Yeah, the money mattered a lot. And one thing I didn't say that I'll just conclude with is that I think it was close to $25 million that was put on the table by the government. But of course, this didn't go unnoticed by other state and county institutions in New Jersey. And so very quickly, another $45 million was put on for those universities. And so we wound up helping universities that weren't at the table. Now, of course, they've got to claim that money. What happened is Rutgers got $25 million from the state, but it wasn't earmarked for adjuncts, salaries. So of course, now they just want to use it for other purposes. And of course, that's what some of the critics of me and others say, like, you idiots didn't get them to just give you the money, right? Now, I don't myself think, given what the balance of forces was, that was going to work in that moment. But of course, we thought about it. But the point is, there is additional money that's been allocated. It took this strike to do that. to allocate additional money.
I
for
think.
state And county colleges that is there to be claimed, and I hope that they claim it.